Hello and welcome to Words with Dr. Whitaker. I am the superintendent of the City Schools of Decatur, and I am so excited to have two of our wonderful staff members with us today for a topic that is most timely, and that is safety and security. Safety in the City Schools of Decatur is top priority. And when we think about safety, it's so important that we not only recognize that it's top priority for us in the City Schools of Decatur, but also when it comes to legislation and even the upcoming legislative season. We have received word from the Georgia Department of Education that is their number one priority, their number one legislative priority, and that would be safety. Today, I want to welcome two of our staff members. One who is our new Safety and Security Director, Mr. James Brown. And no, it's not the James Brown you know, but it is another person named James Brown. And then also our Chief of Information Services. He's been on the podcast once before, but we were going to talk a little bit about some new duties and responsibilities that are under his role and under his hat. So welcome to both of you.
Glad to be here.
Oh, so excited to have you here. So excited to have you here. When we think about safety, it's top of mind for us here in Georgia, specifically with Appalachia. But just a couple of days ago, if you will, there was a shooting in Wisconsin. And so when I think about safety in the City Schools of Decatur, it stays top of mind. One of the things I want the community to know is that our thoughts are with not only the community at large, but also the staff, also the students in those communities. And so it's something that does not fall lightly on me, that we must keep our children safe. The reassignment of safety and security to information services. What does that mean? Why do we do that?
It means a few things, and we did it for a few compelling reasons. One of them is that physical safety very often these days relies more and more on technology and technology infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Additionally, many of the mindsets that we've adopted successfully over the last few years around cyber safety apply to physical safety. Principles such as defense in depth, open channels of communication, recovery plans, and so on. Additionally, the type of change management necessary to mature a program and a mindset around a safety culture affect all corners of the organization. Mm-hmm. And that is something that maps very closely to change management in the IT world, when we often do change that affects all categories of employees, not only teachers and administrators, but also bus drivers and custodians. Everyone needs to be on board. We have a track record of having done that recently, and it's a skill set we can apply now into the safety world. And the state is seeing more and more of this overlap. Over the last couple of years, there's been a Safer Schools series of grants from the DOE. The first two rounds focused very heavily on physical safety, but round three was cyber safety. We're seeing at the state office recognition of more and more convergence between these two domains.
And why Mr. Brown as our new safety director? What made Mr. Brown the right fit for right now in the City Schools of Decatur?
Mr. Brown is the best fit right now for what we need.
Ooh, I love that.
Absolutely. Mr. Brown comes from having done this work in mature districts. Mm-hmm. We're very proud of the work that we do in City Schools of Decatur as a small, medium-sized district in the Atlanta area. But you've talked, Dr. Whitaker, about moving from good to great.
Yes.
Mr. Brown, both rounds of his interviews, talked about the book.
Yes, he did.
Great. We see echoes. Mr. Brown has led transformational leadership in safety and security in these two larger districts up in South Carolina. We're lucky to snag him from. And Mr. Brown, throughout not only during the interviews, but since and every day since day one, connects the work of safety and security to outcomes for kids. When we think about a strategic plan, all means all and student outcomes, it isn't just about safety programs for the sake of safety programs. It is how do we make sure that our kids are taken care of, not only from the perspective of the physical safety components that Mr. Brown directly shepherds, but also seeing the interdependencies and the necessity of collaboration with folks like student support services and whole child wellness. Mm-hmm. So much of our work around safety and security, particularly for children, can be mitigated, can be addressed if we are able to earlier identify and support kids before they get to a crisis moment. And so Mr. Brown sees the whole picture, and that is what we need in this moment.
And Mr. Brown, you've only been here a couple of months, but you are definitely all in for the city schools of Decatur.
Yes, all in. I love the phrase, the mantra, the all in. When we talk about safety and creating that safe and secure environment, it's for all students, mm-hmm. for all staff, mm-hmm. for all community and stakeholders. If I can just go back, when we talk about things that pull at our hearts, we did have a shooting mm-hmm. Earlier this week, although it was not in the state of Georgia.
Right.
When you're watching your colleagues in news conference, be it the law enforcement, be it the emergency manager, be it the educators, your heart goes out to what they're going through. And you just think about, okay, how can I make sure
right.
the city schools of Decatur is prepared if we ever have to go through such an event. And I'm excited about being under your leadership and the vision that you have for safety and security. But all means all.
All means all. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely more than just a mantra.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about our strategic mm-hmm. plan. So every time I'm with you on this podcast, I talk about our strategic plan because that truly is what guides the work. And safety and security is in each and every one of our strategic accelerators. So first, student success in all areas, they have to be safe. So in order to be safe, we need to focus on safety. That's the physical safety. And then that is also the psychological safety, which takes me to accelerator 2, which is how do we build and sustain an engaging and inclusive culture? And in that building and sustaining, that culture has to be built also of safety. I know that's one of the things that we're talking a lot about in our district, especially this year. But how do we build a culture where the children understand the importance of safety? The last podcast, I had our chief of fire on to talk about Fire Prevention Month. But once again, a focus on safety. And now, going to the third accelerator. If we want our students to feel safe, we obviously want our staff to feel safe. And if a staff member does not feel safe, it's going to be very difficult to retain high quality staff or even recruit high quality staff if they do not feel safe at the workplace. And the infrastructure necessary to build what we know would be the best in class in safety and security truly requires us to be effective, for us to be efficient, and for us to be excellent when it comes to our infrastructure, which is that fourth accelerator. And that type of organizational leadership is something that's required not only of me, but also the two gentlemen that we have with us today who are leading this work. So safety is definitely embedded in all 4 of our accelerators. Anything you guys want to add about that?
Well, I think you definitely hit on the point that having a safe and secure environment can affect student achievement, can affect recruitment and retention. Teachers want to be in a safe environment. They want to work in a safe environment. Students want to be in a safe environment, and they want to learn in that safe environment. And so having that culture of safety is very important and critical, I believe, to the overall achievement of a school district.
Yes.
And like all of our other programs, it is not only what the lens, not only that maybe Mr. Brown and you, Dr. Whitaker, and I have, it matters, is what we're working toward, but we also need to make sure that through functions like this podcast, we're communicating clearly, particularly to our parents.
Yes.
Because it is a sacred trust that our parents put on us to have those kids for 8 hours a day and on programs and whatnot. We need our parents and guardians to know and feel that we're doing our utmost to keep those children safe when they are in our care.
Yes, I often say the phrase, we are in locus parentis. We now are in care as a parent of the children when they're with us. So let's talk a little bit about safety being a top priority. And Mr. Brown, how long have you been with us?
5 months now.
5 months. Okay. So before you arrived, we did have a third-party audit. And that third-party audit outlined a couple of things for us. But we did not take it at face value, because what I wanted is someone just as yourself with your level of expertise to go through the audit and prioritize and recommend what do we need to do now. So talk to me a little bit just about that.
So yes, having an opportunity to read through the audit, and also in the first 60 days, really the first 30 days, as I had those one-on-ones at the local campus site, there were some things that jumped out at me right away. Didn't necessarily need 30 days to make that assessment. From those assessments, my tour and just speaking with the lead administrators on each campus, just observation and just frankly from experience, was able to make some recommendation to you, the cabinet, and our board. And I'm excited about where we possibly can go with those recommendations and implement those.
You are right. And those recommendations actually paused some work we were going to do to the tune of about $1.4 million.
Yes.
Director Brown, when I think about $1.4 million, so we were going to actually use this money towards duplexes. So the City Schools of Decatur, we actually own 2 homes. We own a couple of homes, but we were going to turn those homes to duplexes, potentially for staff. But based upon my recommendation, the board unanimously agreed that we need to prioritize safety. So not only is safety a priority of our administration, but I'm extremely grateful that safety is also a priority of the Board of Education. So we have about $1.4 million, and this is SPLOST dollars. So what are some of the things that, based upon your walking of our buildings, the actual third-party audit, are some of the things you think we need to do?
Well, just a few. One of the recommendations is the security vestibules. How can we improve and update our entry points and create single point of entrances at each of our school sites? The second one is the visitor management system. Now, this will be a culture change for our district, but it's needed. It is for the safety of staff, students, and the community. So visitor management was one of those recommendations. And upgrading and continue to enhance our camera system,
Yes.
camera and access controls. And there were some opportunities there to make sure that we're whole and equity throughout the district in terms of our cameras and access controls. So those are some of the recommendations that we shared with leadership and the board, and we're excited about the opportunities to be able to implement them.
Yes, and to Mr. Melton, you're not only an employee, but you're a parent, aren't you?
I am.
Have you been to a community circle in your lifetime?
I've been to many community circles.
Oh, so visitor management and community circle, that could be a rub. So talk about some of the things that you're doing, because you mentioned change management and visitor management. It's come up in some of my advisory councils with parents. So talk about that.
This is one of these security initiatives that has a relatively easy technical solution. The challenge is training, culture, awareness, and desire for everyone affected, particularly for our most frequent and our most valued visitors, our parents.
Yes.
And so we'll be working with a pilot site. We're going to start with Westchester Elementary and work with them not only on the technical configuration of the visitor management system, which, to pause for a moment, the change is we're going to ask visitors to the building, parents, vendors, to present a state-issued ID, and that ID will instantaneously be run against the sex offender registry, because folks who ping on that registry are not folks whom we want to have around our children.
Yes.
But being carded when you walk into the building will be a change for our parents.
True culture change.
Very much so. And we want to make sure that we take every opportunity, including this podcast, including an upcoming safety summit in January, district-wide and local school communication, to help our parents understand not only this is a change coming, but as Director Brown just said, safety for our kids and our staff is what is driving this change, so that we have assurance that the folks who are in our building as guests are the folks who are appropriate to be around our children. And so we're going to use every mechanism at our disposal, not only to announce, but also educate and explain for our community, and also to work on the procedures so that when we have someone who pings at the front office,
yes,
our front office staff and our building administrators know how to respond appropriately.
Yes.
And we're considering those moments. I've worked, and I think Director Brown too, we've worked in other districts that have systems like this. And some of these systems, just like any other technology situation, sometimes there are false positives.
Yes.
And so we can anticipate and prepare the playbook when someone comes in and it's a false positive. How do we protect the dignity of that guest in our building and not undermine the trust that they have in us? We don't want someone to have an experience where they don't want to come back again because of something that was embarrassing potentially to them and to their child, because they're trying to participate in a school community. And so we'll work, you invoke the picture of community circle, working through with our principals on the logistics of what are the types of activities where we do have families come in and check. What are some high volume activities where we have sufficient monitoring of our guests that we might not need to create a bottleneck of entry into the school? Mm-hmm. We know all of these challenges are coming. This is part of the system of visitor management, not just the tool of visitor management that we're beginning work pretty enthusiastically on when we come back in January.
That's awesome. Well, last year we started on this procurement process and journey. I was very excited that in the spring, the board did approve for us to bring on Crisis Go, Strategics, and actually had a board resolution around Be Smart. So either one of you kind of take it away. What are these tools? What should we expect? What do we already have in place? Take us through the process.
Why don't you take Strategics?
Good. Strategic is a emergency notification system that I am super excited about. It's like a touchdown in emergency management arena, because it does basically one thing. It empowers staff that if emergency or incidents should happen, that they need help, or that if they see something that could possibly put the campus in danger or hear something,
Right.
or that they have at their disposal a badge. It's a single badge with one push button on it, but they push it a certain amount of time, and it'll alert the campus administration
Yes.
that has set up a campus response team. And depending on the number of pushes of the button, it will alert not only district responders, safety, security, and the district response team, but also 911 center, law enforcement, and we're able to quickly mitigate and identify what that issue may be. While we're trying to identify what that issue may be, units are rolling
Yes.
to that particular incident. It has a precise location. So if a staff member is in a classroom, cafeteria, hallway, playground,
Yes.
they mash that button saying, hey, we have an emergency right here in that area.
Yes.
And all effort is geared towards that area.
Exactly. Exactly. That level of precise as well as immediate response is key.
Yes.
And that is one of the things where it could be something as simple as a child falling off of equipment on a playground.
Mm-hmm.
However, to know that teachers feel more safe because they have that access.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So talk to us a little bit about, I think we said Crisis
Go.
Yes. Talk to us about that.
Syntegix is great for saying that something happened
Yes.
and where it is.
Yes.
It doesn't have the capacity to say what and to get into the details.
Right.
For that, we need a dedicated communications tool, and that's what Crisis Go is. When these two, when we get further along, in fact, with Crisis Go, certain Syntegix alerts will automatically trigger the communication thread in Crisis Go.
Is that interoperable?
It's an interoperable data system.
Whoa.
There you go. Crisis Go, it's an app on the phone, it's an app on the desktop. And what it does is when a situation happens, all the right people who need to respond have, regardless of where they are in the world of self-service, the ability to check in, what's going on, what resources do we need to bear. As we mature in our use of Crisis Go, and we think about Crisis Go's rollout to our educators,
Yes.
Crisis Go is also the mechanism for teachers to report back, say in a lockdown situation or an evacuation, I'm safe or I need help.
Yes.
And here are the children who are accounted for. They're with me. Crisis Go is already pulling down our Infinite Campus school rosters. So any teacher assigned to a building can say, I've got James, I've got Jima. Eston's not in my class, but he's in this building. I just pulled him out of the hallway to get him safe. Children can be accounted for. And from an incident response perspective, that gives our building leaders and our district leaders much faster, verified, auditable information about where do we need to prioritize sending resources.
Yes.
And one of the things that Crisis Go and Syntegix, they work together. It is to continue to highlight the safety need for communication, the
Yes.
safety need for getting that information out as quickly as possible. Seconds do matter in an incident.
Yes.
And good, clear communication, alerting the proper staff member on what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And that's where, again, we then begin to tie in our emergency operation plan. Each school has a crisis plan that's catered to their particular site.
Yes.
And it can alert those on that response team to be able to go into the proper protocol and begin to work together to mitigate that incident.
Well, I appreciate both of those explanations for our community. And our Be Smart resolution is really a resolution for the community, because that resolution says we want our families to be smart and to have safe gun storage. And it's just that simple. So when it comes to our legislators, when it comes to this upcoming season, you will see in our board adopted legislative priorities that tools for safety are extremely important. Also, in support of this recommendation is the State House Speaker, John Burns. He too has said safety would be a top priority of this legislative season. So all of these individuals, whether it's the City Schools of Decatur Board of Education, the state superintendent, or even Speaker Burns, are all talking about safety. Maybe we will have SROs in all of our schools. We don't know that, but what we do know is that that is a priority. So we should also mention that if any of these things are a possibility, funding is also something that is needed, because we had to reallocate funding to bring on the projects that we already are online now, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, Director Brown, Mr. Melton, we have covered a lot of safety information. Is there anything else you would want to add about what it really means to be all in the City Schools of Decatur regarding safety?
Yes. In the near future, there will be a survey that will be introduced to the community. Parents and community leaders, look out for that survey. That survey will have a few questions. We would like to know your thoughts that can help us shape and strategize how we can continue to develop our safety and security emergency operation for the City Schools of Decatur. Our goal is to have a collective collaboration of not only school, our city, and parent community and business leaders.
Yes.
Help creating that safe and secure environment where our precious resource, our students, can be all that they could be.
Yes.
And whether in school, before school, during school, and after school, for them to have that safe environment. So I would say look out for that survey. It's coming.
Okay.
And it'd be great for everyone to fill it out, and that will help us at the district level continue to strategize how we can create that safe and secure environment.
And also, I think we have an event coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we do. What's the event?
The event is a safety summit that we are conducting jointly with not just this trio, but also with our student support services department, thinking about whole child support and wellness, mental health, and our city collaborators, fire chief, police chief, to talk about what are the ways that as a community of professionals, we support our students and our community.
That's awesome. So for our community, that event will occur on January the 27th. And that's actually on a Monday. It will be held from about 5:30 to 7. And it will be at Decatur High School in the Performing Arts Center. So we look forward to having our community there to learn even more about the safety strategies that we use here in the City Schools of Decatur. And I must also remind everyone in City Schools of Decatur that safety is something that we are vigilantly accustomed to and maintaining. I am so excited about the future. I'm so excited about the new year. And I know that with these two individuals managing not only the change management of it, but also helping to be present for all children in the City Schools of Decatur, we will be all in. So thank you for joining me on the Words with Dr. Whitaker podcast, and have a wonderful new year.